Two contenders split by just 9 points with 6 races remaining. Every point matters, and no one is more aware of that than the riders involved in that title fight, as our previous round at Donington Park proved. Every point and every grid slot matters, which leads us nicely into Superpole today. Anthony Nelson and Steve English live trackside at Ballerton Park. And Steve, we've had free practice in the morning, the first experience for most of these riders at Ballerton Park. We're actually going to just get a very quick look at those results here. We will see that it was the top 2 in the championship in the top 2 positions of free practice. Beatriz Naylor just getting half a second over Maria Herrera, a huge distance to the rest of the field, with Chloe Jones in 3rd position. And then a few riders battling for 4th, 5th, 6th. There were big gaps this morning. A few riders have tested here in a few weeks ago, but for now, it is the top 2 in the championship who have set the bar quite high.
Yeah, and just speaking to some of the riders, it's obviously a new circuit for everyone. We're used to that sometimes in the WCR last year, obviously being the inaugural season. So everyone has to get themselves up to speed in the course of the free practice session and then get ready for the race weekend. You can see Mal Dobbs there just making her way behind the number 14 machine. But for the riders in the morning session as well, you're out there on used tyres, harder tyres, and trying to get yourself up to speed. Now's the chance to be able to go out there with a fresh tyre and try and set something. Speaking to some other riders, Taylor Ralph said that it was really difficult with traffic out there, so keep an eye out for the number 8. She said that she felt quite good on the bike, wasn't able to show her real pace there. So we'll see what everyone's able to do during the course of the Superpole session.
Taylor Ralph, who was in 11th position in that free practice session in the morning, she was around about 3.7 seconds down on the fastest lap time set by Beatriz Naylor. But Beatriz Naylor, actually one of the few riders who has been here at Ballerton. She was here a few weeks ago, around about a month ago, herself, alongside Chloe Jones, Lucy Budasol and Roberta Ponziani. They were the 4 riders there. Roberta Ponziani actually having a crash this morning in free practice just on her 2nd timed lap. She went down at turn 5 and managed to get back out towards the end of the session, but she didn't get that crucial experience. And that'll be something to watch out in this session, for example, for the number 96. For herself, really, is going to be a tall order, really, to be able to learn the track, the conditions that we have here today, and get over that mistake that she had this morning.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the riders have to be able to react to anything that costs you track time. And Roberta, it's a big loss of time, but herself and her team have tested here. They know what to expect. And it's just a case of now, in this 25 minutes, putting your pace on the line.
Evelyn Lewis from New Zealand, coming off the back of a difficult round that she had at Donington Park. She was dealing with a lung illness all weekend, flu-like symptoms all week, and it went on into the weekend. She still managed to finish in the top 10 in race 1, but did have a bit of a struggle in race 2, and actually did go down in that race, the rider from New Zealand. So all the riders here getting ready to take part in this 25-minute Superpole session. Of course, it's the laps that you said towards the end of this session, which will probably matter. But in recent times, we have had a few riders, actually. Maria Herrera going back to the Superpole in Donington Park. Here she is, the number 6 annual championship leader, who did set her fastest lap. I believe it was in her 1st or 2nd time lap at Donington Park. So different strategies for different other riders. And as you mentioned, Steve, they go out in this session with a fresh tyre, and really the opportunity to get that fast lap in, but also get a lot of knowledge of what the conditions may be like in a race.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just trying to give yourself that bit of knowledge, understanding, and building into the session as well. For the WCR riders, this is a big challenge because the Superpole session basically dictates so much for everyone over the course of each weekend. But in this class, if you qualify in the front 3 rows of the grid, you give yourself the chance to go with those leading riders. You can see Chloe Jones there, the orange leathers in the background. Chloe's a good example of that because last time out she was able to qualify well, and suddenly you have a chance to really perform well in the races. She was fast this morning as well. She was up there 3rd fastest in the FP1 session. So Chloe on the number 15 bike, she made her step forward at Donington. And bearing in mind she was already very impressive in the championship, she's been able to really show what she can do.
And I think this morning is actually the proof of that step that she's done was not just related to what happened at Donington Park. Obviously, she had a lot of testing there, up to 14 days with her JBMotorsports team, and obviously the knowledge that she previously had from racing in different categories in the British Championship at Donington Park. But she gets here this morning at Ballerton and immediately is the 3rd fastest rider, still some way off Beatriz Naylor and Maria Herrera, but clear of the rest of the field, and it just certifies that step forward and will really build her confidence as well going into the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, exactly, and it is a confidence game. It's about trying to give yourself those opportunities to be able to constantly grow and improve. That's where we can see Beatriz Naylor here. Nice and calm from Beatriz as well. She's not too bothered to be straight out on track.
This is what happened in the final lap of race 2 at Donington Park. A lot going on. We're going to see the crash for Chloe Jones there, just clipped by Maria Herrera going to the inside of that corner. But at the same time, Beatriz Naylor moving into the lead of that race. Sarah Sanchez, who had taken the lead going to the fog, yes, has just gone a little bit wide into the Melbourne hairpin. And Naylor picking up her second win of the season. And a crucial moment to do it as well, with Herrera coming into a bit of trouble towards the end of that race. She wasn't completely happy with how the bike was responded in that race, and the momentum, it immediately shifts back to the number 36, who'd lost a little bit when we went to Cremona, those 2 third position finishes. Now she's right back into the title fight. Yeah,
we're halfway through the season, and do you want to be the world champion? And Beatriz Naylor can be the champ, and it's up to her to give herself that opportunity. It comes from the Superpole session and being able to qualify well and then race well. We know that she can beat Maria Herrera. If it wasn't for the penalty at Assen, where she exceeded track limits through the Gert Timmer at the end of the lap, she would have been able to lead the championship right now. That's how close it is between those 2 riders. She's made a big step forward this year.
Speaking of riders who are also impressive at Donington Park, we saw a few moments ago Lucy Boudessel on the number 17 bike. She finished in the top 5 for the very first time in a World WCR race. She was 1/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second off being on the podium in race 2, just behind Maria Herrera in 4th position. And overall making this huge step in those 2 months that we had since the opening 2 rounds at the Dutch round at Assen and later the Italian round at Cremona, going into Donington Park, a track she'd never raced at before.
I did see at Donington someone with a French flag that said "I love Lucy," which I wasn't sure if it was a reference to Lucy Boudessel or the TV show from the 80s, but either way, Boudessel really impressed everyone at Donington, because we've seen that ability to run up inside the top 5 or 6 positions through the course of this season, but to actually have it all the way through the weekend where you're that fast and consistent, I thought she did a really good job. And for her, it's also one of those situations where coming into this weekend, you want to be able to continue that trend. Top 5 in this morning's session. I think that Lucy's been able to really do a good job up to now.
I must say, Steve, that reference went way over my head.
That's the difference those few years make between us, and but definitely for all the riders out there, they know that this is a good opportunity, a brand new track. What's going to be interesting as well is to see the differences that everyone does with their bikes, because one thing that you can change on a WCR bike is your gearing. And speaking to some of the riders, it looks like the likes of Maria Herrera and also Roberto Pontiani on the Clint Forward bikes, they've gone a little bit longer on their gearing as well, which could cost them a little bit of momentum through the changes of directions with if you're trying to carry that corner speed. It might give them a little bit more top end, so we'll see how that plays out.
Part of free practice at new circuit is figuring that out, and it leads to a lot of riders really trying to find those different lines as well at different parts of the circuit. If we had to look at the ideal lap times in the free practice session this morning, there were a lot of riders who really could have improved quite significantly from the best lap that they actually set. A lot of riders with half a second, 8/10 of a second, even slower than what they could have set. So a lot of room for improvement when they go into the Superpole session. Immediately we're seeing Chloe Jones set a 155.6. This morning she set a 155.5, so she's immediately up to pace on her first lap. Beatriz Naylor is also going a second faster at this point of her lap than what the number 15 has done currently at the top of the timing sheets. A month ago, when a few of the riders were here, the fastest lap was set by Boudessel on the number 17 bike, and that was a 153.2. So the lap times that we had this morning significantly slower than what she was able to achieve there. So we might find something a little bit more representative in this Superpole. It wouldn't be the first time, though, this season that we've seen riders set a certain lap time in Superpole and then immediately also go faster in the races. So big margin of improvement for a lot of the riders when they get into a race weekend, and with the limited track time, they really find their speed the longer that the race weekend goes on. So here we're going to see what these riders can do as they cross the finish line. Now, Lucy Boudessel seems to be in position to move up to first. She does. That's 155.0, so losing a little bit of time towards the end of the lap. But what can Beatriz Naylor do? That's a 154.0, immediately the fastest lap time that we've had so far this weekend. Doesn't dip into the 153s, but that is where the first bar is set. Maria Herrera is currently on her lap in the 3rd sector. She would be provisionally on course to move up to 3rd position. So struggling a little bit more at the start of this session, number 6, compared to Naylor on that number 36 bike. And a few riders behind them also starting to move up and set their personal best lap times of the weekend. We have Avril Lewis on a fast lap time, also Jessica Howden and Jessica P, you can see the number 52, on course to move up to the top 3 in this session. And Herrera behind them, provisionally on course to move up to 2nd.
Yeah, just when you look at the times as well, Beatrice with her 54.0 fast time we've had so far this weekend, as you'd expect, fresh tyres going in to give you that bit of a benefit. Just looking at the sector times as well, Beatrice in the first sector was ever so slightly slower than she went in this morning section, and then in the second sector finds some time in the third sector, matches the pace from this morning, and then in that final sector they're in and around the same sort of time as well. So everyone immediately down to the pace from the free practice 1 session, and as you'd expect, and now into the Superpole session as they move into their second, third, fourth laps. This is where we'd expect to see people start to impress, and you can see on the timing tower on the left hand side of the screen the red sector beside number 15 Chloe Jones. That means she's on course to move up to the top of the timesheets.
Avalon Lewis actually just headed into pit lane towards the end of that lap, but she has gone immediately out, so not sure if that was just trying to check something quick with the team. But number 21 is back out on track. We've immediately got 6 riders who have dropped below the 156 mark. This morning it was only the 3 riders, our top 3 of Neyla, Herrera and Jones. So a lot of riders starting to find that pace. Paquita Ruiz actually moving up to 3rd position provisionally. That would be by far her best qualifying performance in World WCR from the number 46. She was quite impressive as well in Donington Park with 2 6th position finishes, and one of the most impressive and consistent riders in the field. So we have a few faster laps here. Roberta Ponziani immediately moving up to 7th position with Taylor Ralph in 9th. But it's Chloe Jones who seems to have the pace on this lap.
And you can see there for the 96 of Roberta just bails on this lap as well. Turn 1's one of the areas of the track where riders have said that's where the asphalt's a little bit tricky for them from the FP1 session, but for WCR riders shouldn't be too much of a factor. You can see Chloe Jones here though, like you said, Anthony pushed for the first half of the lap, lost a lot of time in sector 3, had a bit of traffic though through the end of that lap, and through 15-16 that is a place where you can lose a lot of time.
It's Herrera and Ruiz on another fast lap now, and Herrera starting to match the time that Neyla set in her previous effort. Ruiz is actually just behind the number 6, a couple of seconds behind, so getting that reference from the rider who is currently leading the championship. Let's see what the number 6 can do. She does move up. It's the first 153 that we've had here at Ballanton Park in an official session. 153.8, so finding around about 0.2 of a second in that final sector for the number 6. It'd be interesting to see what Neyla can do in this lap, because she is currently up by 1/4 of a second going through that second split.
Yeah, and these two really do look like the class acts of the field this season. They really have been able to separate themselves from the likes of Sarah Sanchez as well. Sanchez last year really strong and consistent. This year just hasn't quite kicked on like we saw Beatrice Neyla do, and Neyla's fairly kicking on at this stage, and gives up a little bit of ground in sector 3, but down in towards the last couple of corners she's got a good opportunity to move up the pole.
Sanchez actually down in 12th position. That would be by far the lowest that we've seen from her in a World WCR grid. She was quite slow to get up to speed this morning, did eventually move up to 7th position, but it has been a bit of a struggle for the number 64, who was actually suffering quite a lot in terms of top speed compared to the rest of the field. Neyla drops into the 153.5s, so again a new lap record obviously in their session. Every lap that we do see improved upon that will be the lap record, but it's starting to be impressive pace from the number 36 now.
Yeah, just looking at the sectors as well, the speed trap is quite interesting, because for Jess Howden, just under 200 k's an hour, 195, she's got a pretty sizable advantage over quite a few riders that are a lot slower through that trap. 185, 186 seems to be about the norm, so that'll depend on the gearing that you're using as well, whether or not you're giving yourself that opportunity. But for Howden, currently on the 3rd row of the grid, it's roughly where we've tended to see her qualify. She's been fast over single laps over the last couple of seasons, but just needs to be able to put those results together on the races as well. That's Chloe Jones on the 15 machine, just moving across to set her personal best. She's just shy of a second off the pace now, but up on that 2nd row of the grid. Great to see her continue the progress that she showed last time out at Donington.
Yeah, a word on Jessica Howden, who we saw a few moments ago. She is currently in 8th position. She was 6th for the very first time, for the second time actually, on that 2nd row of the grid, number 52. And going back to her a little bit, it's been really that sort of inconsistency which has been the issue with the number 52. She's capable of very fast laps, very good performances, and then crashes in just about every round.
Yeah, Jess has been really fast since she came into the WCR, but she's had some clumsy crashes as well, and she's had some unfortunate crashes where she hasn't been to blame for it. But unfortunately for Jess, it's the flashes of potential that show what she could be, and you want in the second half of the year where she's really able to get those results, because she's shown that she very much deserves her place in the lead group here in the WCR. but you need to be able to get the results as well. And that's where into the second season, I think we've been able to see something really interesting for how riders have developed and evolved. As Beatrice Naylor comes across the line, tries to improve her fastest time, misses out by a few hundredths of a second, but faster than anyone bar Herrera. But what's been interesting for the riders this year is we have seen a big progression. The riders that were in the second group have suddenly given themselves a chance to be at the back of the first group. The riders in the third group have moved into the second group. And if you're still in the third group, it's very difficult to justify being able to keep your space in the grid next year.
You see a lot of riders when you look further down the timing sheet too. Last year were consistent top 10 contenders, the likes of Emily Bondi, Lucy Michelle as well. Riders who seem to come in with a lot of potential, young riders with a lot of potential, who this year have suddenly lost a pace, lost a step in terms of the results, not necessarily performance, but who have found themselves again dropping from that second group to that third group as well, with that income, that new income of young riders who've come in, of rookies, the likes of Chloe Jones, the likes of Evelyn Lewis, the likes of Natalia Rivera as well, who was quite impressive in Donington Park. A lot of riders coming in this season who've been able to make that little step and make it difficult for the riders who are coming in for their sophomore season.
Yeah, it is one of those situations where riders have made those changes and it becomes more difficult to then make that next step. You get to where you are quite quickly in this class, and then you've got to gain your experience and move on. What's been interesting is to see Maria Herrera on the number 6 machine. Herrera's actually seems to have taken a lot more riders under her wing this year than she did last year. Last year, she was so focused on beating Anna Carrasco that was the main thing she was thinking about at all times. Now she's able to battle with Beatrice Naylor and actually smile and congratulate her after she gets beaten. They've had a good race and you get beaten. But it's been interesting to see that progression. And then when you look at other riders, we've been able to see it where the leading riders will tap the tail unit for a rider that they think just can make that next step and give them the chance of being able to qualify well. Because if you qualify that row further up than you have been, you avoid a lot of the problems. The problems in every grid are row 4, 5, 6. It's so easy to get caught out by someone else's accident. And that's where we've been able to see riders probably work a little bit better together and make those steps. And certainly Sarah Sanchez, we can see here on the number 64 machine, needs to make that step. She's down there on the 4th row of the grid right now, on course for a personal best, but not improving at enough of a rate where she's going to move up into the top 8 really at this stage, it looks like. We'll see if she's able to have a good run through.
Sarah Sanchez, who hasn't qualified lower than 5th position this season. She was a regular on the front row of the grid as well last year, the main contender to that duo of Herrera and the eventual world champion Anna Carrasco. Sanchez was really the third rider who was able to also make some, let's say, make some waves for herself, and perhaps the surprise package of that season, the way she was able to contend with those two riders every single round and win races against them on one-on-one battles. So it's sort of, I think we mentioned in the previous round at Donington Park as well, but it's been a surprise to really see the number 64 kind of regress in terms of her result and regress in terms of her performance in general compared to what she was able to do last year. She still is in 3rd position in the championship. She did move past Roberta Ponziani in the previous round, but she has lost distance with that front two, and she's never quite looked in position to really be able to fight with them the way she did last year.
Yeah, and it's been one of those things that is quite difficult because last year she impressed everyone and exceeded expectation, and this year she's regressed a little bit, even though she's still been very competitive all the way through. This is quite good to see. You can see Lucy Budasal down there provisionally on the 2nd row of the grid. Look at her crew chief working with her as well, Andrew Pate. World champion winning rider and a lot of success as a crew chief as well. And pity, of course, Jonathan Ray's crew chief last year in the Superbike for the Crescent team. This year he's working in the Supersport class GMT 94. He's got new rider the last few rounds. They've been much more competitive with Roberto Garcia, and he's also helping out in the WCR as well.
Yeah, I was having a chat with Lucy yesterday for an interview that will go out on the WorldWCR social channels in the near future, and she was talking about as well the importance of working with the crew chief who has so much experience in so many different classes, who was a rider himself, Andrew Pitt. It was very interesting really to hear that feedback from herself. Of course, Lucy coming in here working with that GMT 94 squad, but very limited resources in terms of the mechanics that she'll have for the team and everything. So very good to see her have that rider with that crew chief or an engineer alongside who has that sort of experience as Andrew does.
Yeah, it really is. And just looking at the timing screens as well, we can see the 94 here of Barbera, but we want to be able to see Sarah Sanchez. She's on for a good lap now, the number 64. She's round about a second quicker than she's been up to this point, moves up onto the second row of the grid. What's good for that as well, Anthony, loses a 10th of a second in sector 2 and loses a 10th of a second in the final sector. So she's losing half a second in sector 1, she's losing half a second in sector 3, but at least starting to get more competitive.
And that second row of the grid immediately puts her within distance of the front too, and gives her that chance as well to not get caught up in any incidents behind her. She starts from the third or fourth row of the grid, but also for not to lose any distance with her, because as we've seen in the past, it's so difficult really to be able to bridge that gap once it started to open with these Yamaha 7s.
Yeah, it really is, and if you're not in that lead group, you have no chance to catch back to it, and that's what we've seen all the way through, and that's where it becomes so important to put in these fast laps in the qualifying session. And Superpole has gotten more competitive over the last few years, the last second half of last season and into this season compared to last year, and it becomes so important to be able to get that good lap in.
So final few minutes in this Superpole session. A lot of riders have gone in to pit lane a few minutes ago, but most of them are back out on track and starting their final laps here. We're going through a few of the riders on the grid. Billy Fuller from New Zealand in her rookie season. She is down in 25th position. She was outside of the 110% required to qualify for a race in this morning's free practice. She would just be within that in this session. Also, the American substitute for Isis Carreño, Elisa Gendron, on the number 78 bike, she would also qualify for this race, making a big improvement in the Superpole session.
Yeah, and Elisa usually racing on the Twins Cup bike in Moto America, so at least a similar type of machine as the R7, although what we have here in the WCR very different to those bikes as well in terms of what you're able to do to change the bike. This should be provisionally on the front row of the grid here for Sarah Sanchez. She'll probably come across the line and be a 54.5, so we'll see what her overall lap time is, and loses out in that final sector, so she ended up probably losing about 3/10 than she would have expected in that final sector.
And that is a difference right now between being on that front row of the grid. It's just 2/10 of a second between Reith in third position and Sanchez down in sixth. That second row of the grid looking very tight with Jones and Budasol as well. Neyla is on a slow lap here. She's lost about a second in the second split. Herrera still hasn't started her lap. She'll be coming around the start-finish straight in a few seconds' time. None of the other riders in the grid improving at this stage, so potentially a few of the riders perhaps using up a lot of their rubber in those first stints and not quite having the pace really to go now for these final few seconds. Obviously still a long way to go, still 6 minutes on the clock, but right now nobody is improving upon their provisional best lap times.
What's interesting is we can see Beatrice Nail come across the line now on the 36, provisionally on pole. Have a look at the wide shot now down in towards turn 1, and you'll see a big group of riders just coming across the line. This is Paquita Ruiz as well. But there's this big group of riders, and then everyone else is actually spread out quite nicely around the track where you've got a bit of space. You want to have a slipstream, but you need to be able to run through these chicanes quickly, and that's where this session is probably a little bit different to the norm of what we see in the WCR, because the slipstream isn't as important as being able to carry that momentum through the corners.
And this isn't a track in which you can potentially get that much of a slipstream compared to somewhere like Donington Park, where in the races we saw a lot of moves going into the foggy S's because of that wide line that you can get around turn 8 and the momentum you can go onto the back straight. Here we don't really have the opportunity to see those sort of moves.
And then the other side of that coin as well is we had a 25-minute practice session this morning. For a lot of the riders, that was the first time they came here. So it also means that you're spending 10 minutes trying to understand the track, and then 15 minutes trying to find a quick time in the practice session. You come back into the pits at the end of it, you break down how the session went, and then you make a big step forward into the afternoon session. And that was one of the things that we've seen throughout today so far.
I clearly spoke too soon because a lot of riders on fast laps now. Natalia Rivera moves up to 9th. That's the back of the third row of the grid. Chloe Jones on course for a very fast lap time as well. She's 6/10 of a second down, but she will be catching traffic, as you said, Steve. A few rides ahead, I think it was Roberta Ponziani. No, it's actually Maria Herrera on the number 6 bike. She is on a slow lap as well. She's caught traffic as well. The rider who's looks like she has a pace right now is Paquita Reith. Going through that second split, she was less than 1/10 of a second down, but she's also caught traffic going through the third split. She's lost 1.4 seconds. Meanwhile, Chloe Jones does move up onto that front row of the grid, just half a second slower than Neyla, so find a little bit of time through that final sector.
Chloe Jones just continues to impress, and I have to say, the step forward we saw at Donington, there's always that sense of, is that because it's a home round? for Chloe, she's always been fast on these bikes. You think back to the end of last season when she turned up in Jerez, she was already straight away into the top 6. She's been in that 5th, 6th, 7th position all the way through her WCR career. Donington, she made the step forward, and she's carried it forward here this week as well.
That dream weekend at Donington Park turned to disaster for the number 15 on the final lap, but there's an opportunity for redemption here in Hungary. A few more riders on fast lap times. Sara Sanchez provisionally on course to move up to the 5th position of the grid. That would be one better than where she is. Here she is at number 64. Further down in the first sector, a lot of riders setting fast lap times. Neyla's a 10th of a second down on her best lap time. Roberta Ponziani as well, currently in 8th position. She is a 10th of a second down through the first split. She slowed down a little bit through the second, but that would still be good enough to push her onto the second row of the grid. The number 96, who had to start all the way back from last position on the grid in Donington Park due to a disqualification, on course to move up to the second row of the grid. Sanchez moves up to 5th, so that's an improvement for her. Pushes Budasol down into 6th position. She is on a slow lap now, 1.2 seconds down through that second split. But now it looks like actually Ponziani is the rider who has the pace. Paquita Ruiz also provisionally on course to move to improve her personal best lap time, but not provisionally her position. So we focus on Ponziani on that number 96 bike, going through that final chicane to 15 and 16. Before that final left-hander, she had a little bit of traffic in front of her. I think it was Chloe Jones on number 15 bike. Yes, she is right behind her. But we'll see if that has slowed Ponziani down on the number 96. No, it hasn't. She's a second slower than Neyla, but it's good enough to move her up to 4th position.
Really important to be able to get that lap time in as well. We saw last time out that she wasn't able to qualify well and condition the rest of her weekend, so good effort there. Seeing a lot of riders put in their personal best. Obviously Ponziani we just saw come across the line with 96. Taylor Ralph trying to improve as well. She's down there on the 4th row of the grid. Usually qualifies a little bit better than that, so Ralph is going to be a little bit disappointed right now to be down there 11th because Jess Howden's just moved ahead of her onto the front of that 4th row.
We still haven't seen an answer from Maria Herrera. She caught more traffic, I believe, on that last lap. She's starting another lap now, which may actually be her final lap. She is down in that first sector by 77 thousandths of a second on Neyla's time. So a fast lap coming from the number 6. Meanwhile, Sara Sanchez on the number 64 bike improving once again. This would be provisionally be good enough to move her onto the front row of the grid. She loses a little bit of time through that third split, but can she make any up through the final sector?
Yeah, for Sara Sanchez, we've seen her obviously find some time and improve as the session's gone on. She's going to have time for one more lap. Unlikely she's going to improve in her time on this lap. She needs to find a couple of tenths of a second to move up to the front of the second row of the grid. She needs to find half a second to move on to the front row. So the goal for her has to be a 54.5, and that could put her up to 4th on the grid.
And the rider with a fast lap now is Chloe Jones. She is just 79 thousandths of a second slower than Neyla through that second split. That would put her in 2nd position ahead of Maria Herrera, who has slowed down on this lap. She's 0.3 of a second slower through the second sector. Chloe Jones, half a second down now through the third split, so losing a little bit of time, but still within distance of being able to challenge Herrera.
Yeah, and Herrera here coming into the final sector, she'll have time for one more lap. She's not going to improve on this time, but Chloe Jones is going to improve, and we'll see if Chloe's able to give herself a chance in that final sector. Still got time for one more lap to go, so for Jones, the lap time went away in that final sector, but herself and Herrera have one lap left, but traffic immediately in front of Chloe Jones. That could well spell the end of this lap for her.
And it'll be traffic as well for Maria Herrera. We could see a few riders in front of the number 6. She'll start her last lap here. I think it's Lucy Michelle immediately in front of her. The checkered flag will come out in 1 second time, so it is out. The final lap's coming in now. All of these riders will have this one lap, but it may not be enough. We're still waiting for the first sector times. Here's Sara Sanchez. She's on a slow lap, so she won't improve from 6th position on the grid. It's a good first sector from Herrera and Ponziani. They haven't caught the riders ahead of them yet, but both of them would be provisionally on course to move up to 1st position. Neyla still hasn't started, or she has started a lap. She's also set up a good first sector, so still one final opportunity for these riders to be able to improve. For Sanchez, she won't be able to improve, and a few of the riders behind her also won't either. It will be a best of 6th for the number 64, her worst qualifying performance of the season. But what we need to focus on now is really what Herrera can do and what Ponziani can do, because they are within touch and distance. For Herrera, she could move up to pole position. For Ponziani, she could move up to the front row of the grid.
Yeah, and for Beatrice Neyla, She's up by half a tenth of a second at the halfway point of the lap, and that's about a tenth of a second faster than Herrera's lap right now. Lucy Budasel, won a fast lap as well on the number 17 bike. We'll see if we catch up with her at some stage during this one. We see the Roberta Ponziani bike here. Ponziani, the lap time's gone away from her in sector 2, and she's got Chloe Jones in front of her.
So that will be a first front row of the grid for Chloe Jones. It won't be any better than that. She's lost time through the third split. Maria Herrera still 0.2 of a second slower than Nayla through the final split. It'll be a big ask for the number 6 to be able to take pole position here today. Lucy Budasel actually on course to improve up to third position. She's lost a little bit of time through the third split, but still within 7/10 of a second of the fastest lap time. So Herrera, that's the traffic in front of her. We said at the start of the lap, she's annoyed by all the riders in front of her, but she will not improve her lap time, and it will be a best of second for the number 6.
Yeah, we said once the lap time started that it was going to be very difficult for herself, for Chloe Jones, to be able to find some clear track to be able to set a fast time, and so it proved. That's Lucy Budasel just coming across the line now, and doesn't improve her time, but the third row of the grid. So a decent effort there from Lucy to be able to be up on the third row, still in contention for the races this weekend.
And all of that means it's back-to-back poles for Beatriz Nayla. She secured it quite early here with that 53.5, 0.3 of a second faster than Maria Herrera. That is a big gap for the standards that we've had in Superpole sessions in this Women's Circuit Racing World Championship, and that will be such a confidence booster. We see here this conversation between Jones and Herrera. I think the question is really, was it number 15 who impeded her on...
It can't be a real complaint about Chloe Jones when Chloe's catching riders that are a second and a half slower than her a lap. So for that, they're just having a chat there. That's nothing about the traffic that Maria would have found. But for Herrera, still qualifies up there in the front row of the grid. What will be interesting when we hear afterwards is to see what they've decided to do with forward team for their gearing. As I said, quite a few riders had said to me that one of the things that was going to be key this weekend was what you were going to do with that gearing. And speaking to people down in the WCR tent, the forward team was one of the teams that seemed that they were going to go a bit longer on it. So maybe it'll come back and help Maria during the races tomorrow, but it might have cost her just for a single lap pace. But as it is, she's on the front row of the grid. Her teammate Ponziani's up there in the second row of the grid. So it should be a case of being able to still be right there in the thick of it all the way through the weekend. And for Beatriz Nayla, again, it's another step forward where she's been able to show just how good she is at qualifying.
Also, shout out for Paquita Ruiz. We've mentioned her a few times during this session. She ends up in 5th position. She was provisionally as high as 3rd at one point, but that is her best qualifying performance in World WCR. I mentioned before, the most consistent rider in terms of results on the grid, but making that small step forward. And what we've been missing from the number 46 is to see if in the context of a race, she can latch onto that front group and really start to compete. This will be a best opportunity so far.
Yeah, it will, and it's definitely a good opportunity to be able to fight it out, and we've been able to see her, obviously Donington and now into this weekend, really quick and consistent, and tomorrow's going to be a real opportunity.
Mention as well for Sarah Baron on the number 5 bike. We haven't seen her so far in this, well, we haven't seen her in this session, but she's coming in here as a wild card. She was competing in a championship last year, and she is up to the 4th row of the grid. So a fantastic result from the Colombian. But for the time being, here it is Beatriz Nayla. We'll hear from her in a few seconds' time, but she's obviously elated by that. She did get a track day here about a month ago, so she did come into this weekend with around about 30-40 laps under her belt. Just that little bit of experience to be able to be up to speed straight away for the number 36. But it doesn't take away from her performance here. 0.3 of a second faster than what Herrera was able to do on her best lap time. So extraordinarily impressive once again from number 36. And it starts to open a few questions for our current championship leader. Steve, you mentioned before how relaxed Herrera's been this season. She may not be if Nayla's form continues in this manner. Yeah,
I don't think that you're able to relax at all, because Beatriz has been able to show just how consistent she is and how fast she is. And when you got that speed, you give yourself opportunities, and she's definitely done that.
So we will hear from the number 36 in a few moments' time. Down in pit lane, our pole sitter, back-to-back pole position for the number 36. Here she is. Let's hear from her.
Beatriz, second pole position in a row and a good opportunity to recover some points in the championship. Tell us, how was Superpole?
Yeah, I'm happy. This Superpole was a little bit difficult, but I'm happy. We did a good job, and this is the result, so let's enjoy tomorrow to start again from the first position.
Well done. Congratulations.